May 3rd, 2021 started like any other Monday for Paul Akridge. The sun was already warm in Keystone Heights, Florida, and Paul was outside tinkering with his car. Nothing unusual there. He had that restless energy, always keeping his hands busy, always fixing something. Around midday, he drove over to his parents' place to pick up their car. "Just need to grab some parts in Palatka," he'd told them. It was the kind of errand Paul ran all the time. He was that guy, you know? The one who took care of everyone else's problems before his own. The drive to Palatka was routine. Whatever he needed, he found it. But it's the drive back that haunts everyone now. At 5:10 p.m., a security camera captured Paul pulling into his sister's driveway. There he is on the grainy footage, bucket hat pulled low, something covering his face. He drops off his parents' car and walks away from the camera's view. That's it. That's the last anyone ever saw of Paul Akridge. For a family that talked every single day, the silence that followed was deafening. Paul wasn't the type to disappear, wasn't the type to go quiet. When his phone stopped ringing and his Facebook went dark, his family knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. The police believe someone picked him up after he left that car. Where they took him, what happened next, that's where the story goes black. If you could go back and change one phone call, one conversation, one moment, Selena Akridge knows exactly which one she'd choose. 3 days before Paul vanished, her phone rang. It was her brother, but something in his voice made her stomach drop. Paul was scared. Not worried, not anxious, but genuinely terrified. "Selena," he said, and she could hear him trying to keep his voice steady.
"You ever wanted by a million people, you're gonna know what it's about."
Came tumbling out like he'd been rehearsing them, like he'd been carrying them around for days. "I don't know what they'll do to me, but they will dispose of me. They have more resources and money than the police." Selena's heart was racing. "Who, Paul? Who are you talking about?" But he couldn't or wouldn't say. All he could tell her was that he didn't want her spending the rest of her life wondering what happened to him. This wasn't Paul. Paul was the protector, the problem solver, the one who took care of everyone else. But that day he sounded like a man who'd seen his own ending and was trying to warn the people he loved most. The call ended and Selena was left holding a phone and a terrible feeling that she'd just heard her brother say goodbye. Growing up in Keystone Heights, Paul Akridge was the kind of kid everyone gravitated toward. He was the only boy among 4 children, and while his parents would never admit to having favorites, Paul held a special place in their hearts, and he knew it. Selena, born just 15 months after Paul, always said they were like twins. They shared everything, secrets, dreams, that unbreakable bond that only siblings truly understand. But Paul wasn't just beloved at home. On the baseball diamond, he was magic, shortstop, pitcher, team MVP more times than anyone could count. When he graduated in 1988, Santa Fe Community College came calling. 2 years later, the University of Florida wanted him too. At Florida, though, the dream started to shift. Paul found himself warming the bench more than throwing from the mound. So he did what Paul always did. He adapted. He transferred to Warner Southern, where he could finish what he started. When he wasn't playing ball, you'd find Paul by the water. His father had taught him to fish when he could barely hold a rod, and that passion never faded. Every week, Paul would head to Santa Fe Lake in Gainesville for tournaments, coming home with stories and usually the prize for biggest catch. His sisters remember those victories lighting up his whole face. Paul was competitive, sure, but more than that, he was alive. Fully, completely alive. He never missed a family gathering, never said no to someone who needed help, even strangers. Paul had this way of making everyone feel like they mattered, like they were worth his time and attention. But beneath that golden surface, Paul was fighting a war that nobody could see. It started in college, the drinking, the substances that promised to quiet whatever noise was in his head. What began as weekend fun slowly became something else, something that followed him home and stayed. His family watched it happen in slow motion. They'd plead with him to get help, to turn himself in when legal troubles started piling up. But addiction doesn't listen to reason, doesn't care how much love surrounds it. Years passed and Paul's body began paying the price. The diagnosis came like a punch to the gut: pulmonary hypertension. His lungs, his heart, everything was failing. Even then, even sick, Paul kept showing up. He'd still drag himself to family dinners, still call his parents every day, still head out to the lake when he could manage it. The addiction might have had its hooks in him, but it never touched the core of who Paul was. His family knew that. They saw past the struggles of the man underneath, the one who'd give you his last dollar, who'd drive across town to help a friend, who'd light up when he talked about catching that perfect fish. But now, looking back at that final phone call, they wonder if Paul's health, his history, his battles had caught up with him in ways they never imagined. Had he gotten in over his head? Had someone threatened him knowing he was vulnerable? 4 years. 1,460 days of waking up and wondering. Paul's mother Denise describes it like living in suspended animation. You wonder every day, every hour what happened to Paul. The not knowing is its own special kind of torture, too painful to accept he's gone, too heartbreaking to keep hoping he'll walk through the door. Paul's father took it the hardest. The man who'd taught his son to fish, who'd been his closest friend, spent that first year sitting by the window, waiting, watching, hoping to see Paul's familiar figure coming up the drive. He died one day after Paul's 51st birthday. His heart, his family says, simply broken beyond repair. How do you grieve someone who might still be out there? How do you let go when there's no body, no goodbye, no final moment to hold on to? Every holiday arrives like a fresh wound. Every birthday passes with one empty chair. The family gathers. They try to celebrate. But Paul's absence fills every room he should be in. Denise says if Paul walked in today, she wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't demand explanations. She'd just hold him and tell him what she's been saving up for 4 years, that he's loved, that he's missed, that he's forgiven for whatever battles he was fighting.